time for MIDI Unscripted. Okay, MIDI Unscripted, where I'm stuck at home on lockdown and I don't have a script, I don't have notes. If you listen closely, you can hear my granddaughter talking in the hallway. For this episode, let's talk about all the ways we can connect a Chase Bliss pedal to a MIDI controller or 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 even a MIDI controller. I think the first hurdle of understanding Chase Bliss MIDI with a variety of controllers is trying to figure out how to cable it all up and how to connect it based on what type of output your MIDI device has. So we have a Chase Bliss pedal, and you know it's a Chase Bliss pedal because it has like 6 knobs at the top and it looks really happy. And the MIDI jack is on the side here. It's a TRS jack. Lives right about there. And the thing about a TRS jack is that is tip, ring, and sleeve. So if we look at a TRS cable, it's got a tip, a ring, and a sleeve. That's different from a standard guitar cable that just has a sleeve and then just a tip. So that plugs in here, and the MIDI is carried on this ring. So if we talk about TRS, the MIDI's on the ring. Most TRS MIDI pedals, like this Alexander Quadrant, have MIDI on the tip, and then you would just plug in a standard guitar cable. On Chase Bliss pedals, we often have more than one function assigned to that jack. So we ended up putting MIDI on the ring, like I said, and then on most pedals, there's something else that's on the tip. So on Brothers, we have a thing where you can activate this channel on the tip. If you look at the original Warp Vinyl Hi-Fi, it has it where tap is on the tip of this jack. So for our purpose, MIDI is on that ring. What does that mean for Chase Bliss? That means no matter what, a TRS cable has to be plugged in to that TRS jack, receiving MIDI on that ring. Now the other end of this is going to go to whichever MIDI controller we have. So we have some that are, in fact, most of them are going to be 5-pin. And 5-pin is, if we look at this Morningstar MC6, that's that kind of jack. And that would take, you know, those standard MIDI cables like that. So 5-pin, and then we'll draw like a great big thing here. That's supposed to be the 5-pin MIDI jack. And then another type actually has TRS MIDI outputs. That would be things like the Qconnect, which has 8 different TRS MIDI outputs. Some of the early DMC stuff has MIDI, TRS MIDI outputs. So we'll call this one TRS. See how it looks just like that one? And then another way to do this might come from your computer, like your DAW. And that would be USB. We'll draw that like a triangle. So here are 3 examples of different ways that MIDI has to get from some sort of control device to a Chase Bliss pedal. So let's take a look at every single way that we can cable something like this up. I'm stuck at home, you're stuck at home, let's just do this. Okay, first we're going to go with 5-pin. Now, say we have our brothers here, and we have a Morningstar. Let's start from the Morningstar side, and let's connect a USB cable. Standard USB cable, obviously that doesn't go into the Chase Bliss pedal. You're going to need, well, I shouldn't say you're going to need. One way to do it, the way that we recommend it, is using a MIDI box. This is our 3-output MIDI box. This one is a prototype one. That's what I have. There's also the old Empress, well, the old Empress and the newer Empress. We have an older Chase Bliss MIDI box. There's even a MIDI I made by Meris, which is not super ideal for a Chase Bliss pedal, but I'm going to show you that, and I'm going to set it right over there to remind me to talk about it in a minute. So you can use any of these. Let me start first with the one that we recommend. And for that, I'm just going to go ahead and power this up. I've got all these power cables sitting here. Alright, so powered up the MIDI controller, powered on the MIDI device, powered on the Chase Bliss pedal. So you go to the input of the MIDI box. Now from the MIDI box to the Chase Bliss pedal, we have some options. The standard way to do this is with a TRS cable. You would just plug into any of the outputs and then go straight over to your Chase Bliss pedal, and let's see if we're up and running here yet. Yeah, so we're receiving, you see the center LED blinking there. That means we're receiving a MIDI signal. This TRS cable happens to be a super low profile. But you know, a more typical USB cable looks like this, because it's usually used for things like stereo audio. Working fine, but look how huge and bulky that is. There's nothing wrong with this. If that fits on your board, use it. But if you look at this super skinny cable, Disaster Area Design sells these. It's called a multi-jack for Chase Bliss cable. One end is soldered, hardwired to, it's sending this tip to this ring. So the idea is this end of it comes from a source that transmits MIDI on the tip. So if you were using like a DMC, that sends MIDI on the tip. So that's the type of thing. That's where the need for this cable came from. However, I like to use it just because it's super low profile. The cables are really small, and they fit nicely on a pedal board. See how tiny that is. And then this end of it even just kind of folds away. You can get a right angle out of it. Very nice and compact. However, when you go to use this cable, no presets changing. On the inside of the MIDI box, and it's kind of hard to see. Alright, so if you look right here, you can see a little black jumper. You don't need tweezers, but it does make it easier. So I'm just going to pull that off and set it aside for a second. but then you see an R and a T. And I bet you can guess what that means. So they're on the jumper. There's just two little holes where little contacts will go into. It's probably easier for me to draw this. So if you were looking kind of from the side at that jumper, there are 3 wires. However, they're all the same length. So let me try to draw this better. There. 3 wires. This side said ring. This side said tip. And then to simulate the jumper, I'm going to use a little 9-volt battery. So if the jumper is coming down on the ring side, see, it's making a contact between these two. And if the jumper is sitting here, it's now making a contact between these two. Alright, now basically what I'm trying to explain is that the jumper needs to be on the top 2 contacts for transmitting on the ring, which is this contact here. And then it needs to be on the next 2 where it says T for tip. And that allows it to send MIDI on this contact, which is the tip. So since this multi-jack cable is a TS cable, we want to be transmitting on the tip, which it now is in the tip position. Now when we come back to our setup, and I go to scroll presets, no problem. So, yeah, I was going to say something else, but I think I'll save that till the end of this video. Okay, so this is one way, and this is like the official, actually this is my preferred way to use this cable. The official Chase Bliss way is to use a TRS cable and we're up and running, no problem. If I take this TRS cable and go into that one where we did it on the tip, I'm not going to get anything. Has to be on the one that's on the ring. Okay, so this, what you see here, let's kind of summarize here. So we have a 5-pin style MIDI controller with MIDI out to a MIDI box, TRS cable into Brothers. Working fine. Alright, let's say if you didn't have the new MIDI box, what if you had the older style Chase Bliss box? It really works the same way. I have an LED indicator on mine, which helps. The only thing you have to make sure is, just like the other box, that the jumper is in the right spot. So this one's not doing anything. So what if you had the setup we see here? You got a 5-pin cable going into the MIDI box, you have a TRS cable, and your Chase Bliss pedal isn't working. Well, it's just like I just showed you on the other MIDI box. There would be 2 reasons why. One reason would be that, well, ignore this LED because they don't normally have an LED. I'll just pull that out for now. One reason would be that the jumper's in the wrong spot. The other reason would be that the Chase Bliss pedal isn't on the proper MIDI channel. Okay, if we look into this MIDI box, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4 jumpers, and each jumper goes to the corresponding output here. So we're plugged into this one, obviously, and it's on the tip, which is at the end. So we're just going to move it over. Not sure if that shows up well enough. Let me grab a little bit better light. Okay, let me show that one more time. It says CBA and EMP. So Chase Bliss and Empress. That used to be the old way that we signified which side it goes on. Empress is at the tip, but almost every, if not every, TRS MIDI is on the tip. So now we just say tip and ring. So moving that jumper over, let me zoom in so you can really get a good look at this. Just looks like this. And I'm just going to the next slot. Boom. And you know you're in because you see the tip one is just kind of hanging out there by itself. Okay, so let's leave this the way it is. I plug this back in. Improve our lighting situation. Aren't these unscripted videos fun? I have no idea what I'm even doing or talking about. Okay, now when we go to scroll, bingo. Works fine. Basically the same thing with Empress MIDI boxes. These don't have jumpers. You have to like unsolder some resistors and move them to different spots. You can email me if you still have one of these and I can show you how to do that, but I'm not going to go over it in this video. That's kind of old news stuff. Okay, let's say that you don't want to use a MIDI box with 4 outputs. You only have one Chase Bliss pedal. I promise you, you're going to end up buying more. But right now, you just have one. And you just want to go, how do I go from here to here? Well, there is a way. It's kind of like not the kind of thing we recommend as the most for sure reliable way of connecting it. You can take a cable, and I have to dig pretty deep to find this cable. Okay, here we go. So this cable is TRS MIDI on one end, because remember that the Chase Bliss side always has to have TRS, no matter what. Always. So this cable is TRS on one side and 5-pin MIDI on the other side. And the way that you have to wire this cable up is very specific, and it's not the standard, so I'll post it right about somewhere between here and here. I'll post it. Have a look. And the way that this cable works is just what you're thinking. The MIDI goes to the output of your controller. The TRS end goes to the Chase Bliss pedal. And there you go. Working fine. Hard to see in the glare. Okay, so this works, but if you're like gigging and you need this to work for sure, you're filling in for Keith Richards on the Rolling Stones tour and it just has to work, you might not want to do this. you're going to want to use a MIDI box. But if you don't have room and you're just kind of messing around, by all means, try that cable. So I think that's every way to go from 5-pin MIDI. Well, not every way. You can make crazy types of splitters, and I'm just trying to cover the basic stuff. But this applies to any controller that has 5-pin MIDI. So like here's a Boss ES5 with 5-pin MIDI. Oh good, I'm kind of glad it's not working, because we're going to show the other thing. So if you got to this point and nothing was working, you would disconnect power. This is how you assign the MIDI channel, by the way. Oh, and sometimes you even need to disconnect this guy. So just do both. Just have your pedal floating in the breeze. Press and hold. Plug in. Now it's waiting for a program change. We're going to go ahead and send that here, and now we're up and running. Of course, this would also work with this cable. Oh, by the way, this is another good point. The MIDI boxes often have A, B, C, D, like the ports labeled, and then some people think that that has to line up to the MIDI channel. Well, all the ports send the exact same signal. Even the MIDI through sends the same signal as these. So you can be on any output and you're going to get the same message. So I can prove that here. We were on this output for ring with a TRS cable, and now we're on this output where we had the tip for the multi-jack, and we're getting the same thing. Okay, so I feel like I've exhausted 5-pin MIDI to a Chase Bliss pedal. That's going to be most MIDI controllers. I'm trying to think if there's... Oh, yeah, the MIDI I/O. MIDI I/O. Now, why would anyone be using a MIDI I/O, right? Well, what if you had this banging set up and you're like, you know, this would sound pretty cool if I added a Brothers. What do you need to do to go from this setup to having a Brothers? First, let's take a look inside the MIDI I/O. Alright, so we're going to look inside the MIDI I/O. Okay, tops off. Here's what's going on inside here. So first let me just say that MIDI I/O means in and out. So think of MIDI going from the MIDI I/O, and I had a TS cable plugged in there. That's actually incorrect. It would be a TRS cable. My mistake. So what's going on with the MIDI I/O with a TRS cable? Well, the MIDI goes in to the pedal, I in, and then back out through the ring. And that's the out, in and out. So that's why with a Meris you need a TRS cable. So what that MIDI signal is doing, and Meris, please go easy on me if I get this wrong. But MIDI, I assume, is coming in, going to the first input, and because each of these are now closed, it would be going all the way down the line. And when you plug in a TRS cable, the MIDI's coming in, going in on the tip, coming out on the ring, and then being carried to the next one. And if you were to plug the next TRS cable in, it would just keep dumping down the line. Now, some of you have wondered why you go to plug a Chase Bliss pedal in, or two, and things aren't working right. And that is because since Chase Bliss pedals are MIDI in only, they're not transmitting the MIDI signal back out and then back into that input to go to the next one down the line. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to use it. So one thing we can do right now, let's do a little experiment. Okay, we're back here. You may notice that the lighting's a little better. That's because I went and took a little break. Well, I hope it's better. But I went and took a little break, had some lunch, and thought I would grab my better lights out of the garage, since even though this is a stuck at home on lockdown video, doesn't mean we shouldn't see what we're doing. So I'm going to try and simulate MIDI going through here and showing you how the signal can get broken. If you've ever used a multimeter on continuity before, it makes a little ringing sound when the two pieces are connecting. So when this lead connects this lead, you get that. If you're touching something that doesn't connect, then you don't get it. You'll get silence. So we're going to take a TRS cable. We're going to plug it in to that first input, and our MIDI signal is coming in here, going to the tip, and we have continuity. If I take my next cable that I would be adding for a Chase Bliss pedal, all right, let's do this right. Take a piece of foil, and we're going to bridge the tip and the ring. Not the sleeve. And I'll even clip that on there to make sure we're getting a good contact on the ring. Okay. So MIDI is getting to the next output, but it's not on the ring. So I'm getting a solid on the tip. I get a little chatter on the ring, but I get one on the sleeve too. So Chase Bliss needs MIDI on that ring, if you remember. So if I put it on the ring, nothing. A little bleep, but not a signal. It's going to the tip. So what I've simulated here with this piece of foil is actually what the Meris pedal is doing. The Meris pedal is taking the MIDI from the tip, going into the pedal, and then coming back out on the ring. So that's, I've just bypassed the pedal is all. Actually, should we plug in the pedal? All right. So is the signal? Yes. Signal is going to the tip, but not the ring. So the Chase Bliss, the next Chase Bliss pedal you want to put in line, nothing's going to happen. What you have to do is at this point, treat this kind of like a multi-jack on a DMC controller. Like that guy. And on that, we need that multi-jack for Chase Bliss cable. That's this guy. So when we plug this in, you already know what's going to happen. Now, when we go to get that MIDI on the ring, there it is. Doesn't go to the tip, doesn't go to the sleeve. Right on that ring, right where we need it. Now, what if, okay, that's working, and then we're like, okay, that sounds great. Let's put blooper in right after our brothers. So we go grab another multi-jack for Chase Bliss cable. Now we're going to run into a problem here. Our signal goes to the first one, but when we try to send that signal to the next one down the line, no signal. Not even going to be going to the tip. It's not going anywhere. Let me show you the ends of the cables and just kind of review what's going on here. So we have the 3 cables in a row here. Let me just zoom in. So that signal is coming into this first cable on the tip and coming out on the ring. So it's going tip and then on the ring, right back into the MIDI box. Then it's going onto the tip of that next cable. But this cable, if you recall, is wired from tip to ring. So it is hitting the ring, but then it stops. That's a dead end. Chase Bliss pedals do not send the MIDI back down the line. So therefore, when you get to that third cable, no go. So what does that mean for a MIDI box and Chase Bliss? Unfortunately, what that means is that if you have a MIDI box, you can only do one Chase Bliss pedal using this method. Meris, I don't believe they make the cable, but I don't think they make it, but they have sent me a diagram, and I cannot find the darn diagram. And in the diagram, going on memory here, I believe the diagram they have is for a TRS cable. And what their TRS cable does is it picks up the MIDI on the tip, sends it down the line to the ring, and then I believe inside this plug, what it does is it just jumps it over to, it may even jump it over here and then just send it down to the ring. Either way, the cable sends it to the ring. But something happens to jump it right here to send it over to the next output jack. So with that special cable, what you could essentially do is have, 1 or 2 Meris and then the rest all be Chase Bliss all the way down the line, and that cable will keep jumping that signal. I'm going to try really hard to find that cable, and I'll either put it in this video or I'll put a link in the description for that cable. But just to review here, MIDI I/O, you can go out to Meris. Meris will send it back in, and then you have to come out with the multi-jack for Chase Bliss. And that's it. It does not go any further. You can go out to a Meris pedal, back in, out to another Meris pedal, back in, out to another Meris pedal, and then Chase Bliss, or out to 2 Chase Bliss. You can't put Chase Bliss first without that cable. It's almost hard to describe this stuff sometimes, because it's like, well, if you have this cable, if you have that cable. Just know that without any fancy cables, you have to do it this way. Meris first, Chase Bliss next. Let's just say you have a MIDI I/O and you have no Meris pedals at all. What happens if you want to just plug straight in Chase Bliss? Let's simulate. Well, let's not simulate. Let's actually set something up here, because I just kind of randomly thought of this and I don't even know if I have the answer. Okay, let's say we just have this and we want to get up and running. I'm assuming that I can't just plug a TRS cable in, but let's see. Yeah, that's not doing anything. Because the ring here is attached to the ring up here, and the MIDI is first going to the tip. It does go to the ring if the cable is disconnected, and I can show you that. So we do have continuity there when nothing's in, but as soon as you plug a cable in, that gets broken. So if you want to get going with just the MIDI I/O and Chase Bliss, you do need this multi-jack cable. Yeah. And then it would only be the one unless you have that special Meris cable mod. Let's try something again here. Let's just get so crazy. Okay, so if we had a situation with our Meris pedal and wanting to plug in 2 Chase Bliss pedals consecutively, and we go to send the MIDI, you can see what happens. It goes to the warp vinyl, but it doesn't go to Brothers. And this is using those multi-jack Chase Bliss cables. Or, even if you didn't have a Meris pedal, and you just wanted to use a MIDI I/O and 2 Chase Bliss pedals, somehow, same thing. It's going to go to the first one, but not the second one. Now that cable, if you email Meris, they will send you the diagram that I referred to. And it's for a cable that is basically a TRS cable, but on the side that goes in the MIDI I/O, and correct me if I'm wrong, Meris, but I'm pretty sure it just shorts the tip in the ring. So now if I take that first one out, that multi-jack for Chase Bliss cable, and this is just a standard TRS cable, and it's not going to work for either pedal, as you see. But if I simulate what that Meris mod does on the cable, so I'm shorting the tip and the ring. Now watch what happens. When I go to send those program changes, now they're going to both pedals. And if we wanted to add a third Chase Bliss pedal, we could still use this multi-jack for the last one, but you would have to have another one of these cables going to the middle one, the second one, so on and so forth all the way down. Okay, have we finally exhausted everything we can do with a MIDI box? I think so. That's good. We've covered 5-pin. Let's move on to TRS. The cool thing going on here is you can take your Chase Bliss pedal. Actually, since I'm shooting a video, I heard that Andy Othling does this. The cool thing is that we're basically just going from an apple to an apple or an orange to an orange. And in between the two, all you need is a TRS cable. All right, so let's get moving along here. Qconnect. I'm just going to plug straight in and see what we get. Okay, not working, so maybe it's the MIDI channel. Still not working. Could be a little bit of DC leakage on the cable. So we're going to do this. Actually, I hope this still doesn't work. Okay, so the third thing it could be is in your Qconnect. We're going to go into the settings. We're going to scroll over to, well, we're going to make sure that device A is Chase Bliss, which it is. Next thing we need to check is, all right, these ports are A, B, C, D, E, F, X, and Y. So we're going to the first output, configure A. So it should be on ring. So it's on tip. And the reason it's on tip is because I usually use these cables. But I'm showing you with the TRS for now. So we're going to change this to ring. Then we're going to come out of there. And we're just going to save that. So now, when we connect to that output, it's working just fine. If we did have the multi-jack cable, I prefer these myself. They're just so easy to work with. Now it won't work, of course. But let's go to the next one because it's probably on tip and it's working fine. So when you're working with a TRS MIDI, let's say we have our MIDI controller here, and we have our Chase Bliss pedal here. We'll just call this a Qconnect. But essentially, it's just any TRS MIDI. So we have a TRS jack here, and the TRS MIDI on the Chase Bliss pedal. Now let's zoom in and get crazy. Okay, so TRS, right? Tip, ring, sleeve. MIDI's on the ring. And we're just gonna make sleeve be green, because it's ground anyway. I almost wrote a G. TRS. Now the S part of all this is just essentially the main body of the whole jack. It's when your plug goes in there, this is all making a connection with that part of the jack. And in that wire, no matter what kind of cable you're using, TS or TRS, that signal is being carried through. It's just the ground. The tip basically comes in and kind of makes one of those guys. And when you plug that cable in, that makes a connection to the tip of the jack. And it's like that on both sides. And then the ring, basically the same thing, but it only goes like that far. So when your plug is in there, it kind of looks like that. See that? So the sleeve is making a contact here. The ring is contacting this part of it, and the tip is contacting that part of it. And then no matter what, I could draw this a couple different ways. Heck with it. Let's draw a TRS cable. So this would be wired to a part of this cable that comes over and makes contact to there. And then same thing with the tip. So a TRS cable has essentially two wires, the ring and the tip inside of here, and then the sleeve is usually a jacket that's around those two wires and just goes to the sleeve on each side. So when you're trying to transmit MIDI from a TRS device to a Chase Bliss pedal, you have to be sure of two things. First thing is the cable, and the second thing is the setting of the device. Remember, this ring, that never changes. That's always. Always. This part, not always. So if we're using a TRS cable, that looks like this, and it looks like this. And a TRS cable is just wired, everything's wired straight across, tip to tip, ring to ring, sleeve to sleeve. So if we need to receive MIDI on the ring here, we need to send MIDI on the ring here. So you would configure your TRS MIDI device to send on the ring, if you're able to configure it. If we're using this cable because we like this cable, then you see what's happening here. It doesn't have a ring, so we have to send on the tip. Configure the Qconnect to send on the tip, and it will go to the ring here. If it's not a Qconnect, if you are using a DMC device that only transmits on the tip, then you can't use a TRS cable. You have to use a multi-jack cable. And then there's no configuring. You just plug and play, because it's already going from the tip, and it will send it to the ring here. Now essentially what a Qconnect device is it is a DMC micro. I don't think I have one on my shelf here. But it's a DMC micro with two MIDI boxes underneath. So if you don't have the option for TRS MIDI, you have a pedal that is only 5-pin. In that case, you have to take a MIDI box, go from here to here, and essentially that turns your Boss controller now into a TRS device. And all the rules that we just talked about here apply to this MIDI box now. Configurable inside with the jumpers. Another TRS MIDI device is the Faves. Now the Faves also has a jumper. However, I was doing a lot of testing and needed to be able to switch between tip and ring, so I have since modded mine. But if you have a Faves and you want to do the tip ring mod like I just showed you here, the jumper would be right here. And it looks just like the one that's in the MIDI box right here. You just move it from the ring to the tip, or the tip to the ring, depending upon what you need. It's funny, I don't even have the proper stuff to show you. I get all the prototypey stuff, or I end up modding it. Anyway, that is TRS MIDI. I'm trying to think of any other TRS MIDI devices. Morningstar now has the MC8. This is the MC6, but they now have the MC8. It'll be that much longer. And it has 4 jacks like this that are TRS outputs. So it's essentially an MC6 with a MIDI box built in. Zoya will send TRS MIDI. I don't think I have my Zoya here either. Where's all my stuff? Okay, so I want my computer to talk to tonal recall. How are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to generate clock from my DAW using a USB and show you everything we need to do to get from here to there. So we have our tonal recall, and then what else do we need? Let's just start at the computer side and work our way over to the tonal recall. So the computer itself has USB ports on the side, of course. So we need something that goes from USB to the MIDI port on our MIDI box. Roland makes this cable called the UM1, and this is, I believe, Mark II or something. Yeah, Mark II. You have to just Google Roland UM1 driver. You have to load that onto even your Mac computer in order to use this cable. And one quick way to test if you are up and running or not is there's a little LED right here. You can ignore these for a second, but this one right here lights up when the computer has recognized the device, and there it is. And then on the other end of this is MIDI send and MIDI return. For me, it's easiest to just look at the arrows. So we want this end because we're going to send MIDI out. I'm going to put this cable right there so we can see the MIDI messages. So we're going to go to the in port. See how the arrows are kind of going inwards there? There we go. The one that is the MIDI return going back to the device and then the computer, we can just ignore that, leave that hanging. So we're going to connect power to the MIDI box now. Now we have essentially turned our computer into a TRS MIDI interface. And all of the rules we've already discussed about TRS MIDI apply here, and now we just need to get from here to our tonal recall. So we're going to power up the tonal recall, and we can use, it's up to us what we use to go from here to here. We could use that multi-jack for Chase Bliss cable. I'm going to use this fancy red TRS cable. I'm going to ensure that I'm on the ring here, which I am, on that jumper there. And then I'm going to go into the MIDI jack. Now I'm going to tilt this up just a bit so we can see the LED a little better. Actually, I'm going to dim these overhead lights. Okay. So I have it set to a really fast clock rate. You see, if I turn this down, we get a really slow. If I go too far, it's just solid because it's blinking so fast. So I want to have it where we can see it. Now, on the laptop, you're not going to see me on this camera, but I do have a screen recording going on, and I'll pop that up here now. So you want to open up Logic. So when you first open up Logic, I normally have a MIDI interface, but I'm not using that right now. So let's start with external MIDI here, and then it's already recognizing my MIDI device, but if you can select your MIDI device here if you don't see it. So let me see if this is working just out of the box here. No, it's having no effect on the LED here. Let me also turn up so you can hear the tempo here. Alright, so what we need to do at this point is we need to go into some preferences. Also make sure you have no dip switches engaged for this part. So we want to go to, also it's going to depend on which version of Logic you have. I have 10.4.8, which I'm not even sure if that's the most recent. Anyway, so go into Project Settings. I hate when people do this really fast, by the way, so I'm going to do this nice and slow. File, Project Settings, and then right over here for synchronization, you're going to click there. And you get this, you want to go to MIDI, and then these are your MIDI destinations. So we're going to select our device, and then we're going to enable clock. This may be an unnecessary step, but I was using pattern for clock mode. Okay, so we're going to get out of here. And now, when I go to press play, you see the clock snapped to that metronome immediately. If I increase this to 240, dead on, right in sync. Let's try like 60. Okay, so this is how you send clock from your laptop to a Chase Bliss pedal. If we wanted to sync for blooper, wouldn't that be fun?